Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel everybody, and Merry Christmas Eve to everyone who celebrates. I hope you have a wonderful time. Right, so we have made our way through 2021 champions, 2021 buffs, all 6 class rankings, and now it's the time for arguably the hardest list to make. No matter how I place the champions, obviously there are really a lot of people disappointed, unhappy, disagreeing, and that's awesome, because that's even all the more reason for us to discuss and, for you to explain exactly why you value some champions differently. And keep that in mind. This is the way I view the game. It's my opinion. It is definitely affected by my own viewpoint, experiences, needs, and everything else in the game. Same as is yours. You are not, immune from it as well. You see some things higher than other people do. You will think some champions are better than, what other people suspect them. And that's normal. Just keep in mind, that's your opinion. This is mine. We're not trying to pick a fight here. We're not trying to insult each other's honor, intelligence, or anything else. We are trying to talk about the game that we all enjoy and show some mutual appreciation for the champions that we all love to play. Right, so we're going to be jumping into Aunt May, and first let me give shout out to some champions that barely missed. Basically, these champions would be listed 16 to 20, something like that, because I have 15 champions. There are 6 classes in the game, and the top spots more or less kind of went where each class got 2 to 4 spots in there. But there are several champions that are very, very close, and I had a very hard time eliminating. No matter what number you pick, whether it's 10, whether it's 15, whether it's 20, there are always going to be some champions that just barely miss out. And in my case, for instance, it is Black Widow Clairvoyant that is very close to getting in the list. She probably was one of the, the last ones to be cut off. It was Ultron, for instance. Ultron, I absolutely love. He's an amazing champion. I just barely kind of didn't make it. Didn't quite make it. We have in Mystic class Diablo, who I know a lot of perfectly reasonable people will absolutely insist that Diablo has to be up there. And there is a good argument for that as well. I'm sure there is a group of players who genuinely believe that Diablo should be way high up there. And then also, I didn't include, this is, I think, the first time around where I don't include Aegon, and obviously Strife as well by extension, but Aegon specifically. However, if you still have yet to do Labyrinth or Abyss, then yeah, Aegon definitely would be deserving to be up there. But this year, when I was ranking Aegon, I specifically excluded Aegon, the part of, Everest type of content from these valuations. So Aegon just kind of barely missed out. Mr. Fantastic barely missed out. And perhaps the biggest shock to you big yellow number police, CGR also barely missed out as being the 3rd in his class. Alright, but anyhow, let's head on to spot number 15 in my personal opinion. Captain America Infinity War. And Captain America Infinity War has always been on these lists, and I think he will pretty much always remain there. Now, I cannot deny the fact that he maybe is not as widely used at the moment as he once was, and there is a very big reason for that. And the main reason is that we're still kind of transitioning from the 5-star to 6-star meta, and a lot of top tier and higher tier players right now in the game are at a point where you don't really want to rank up the 5-stars, because you can rank up the 6-stars in majority of the cases. But with Captain America Infinity War, you have to give the 200 signature stones to this guy. And until getting 6 stars becomes easier, until we have had more time to sig up all the champions that, we might have taken precedent, I think Captain America is kind of like, his use definitely fell down significantly, because initially there were very few Captain America 6 stars that are sigged up. And a lot of people still, myself included, rely on the 5-star. And I still do use my 5-star Captain America Infinity War. But as you know, 6-star rank ups and 6-star 6-stones become more available, and as we have had more time to use him, I think his popularity and his usage and his value will kind of rise again once more, and his presence in the game. Ultimately, he's a very adjustable champion, which is one of the reasons why I personally enjoy him so much, because you can fine-tune him specifically to what you need right now, whether you need access to debuffs or you don't, whether you need specifically armor breaks or petrifies or weakness debuffs, or you're mainly concerned about your kinetic charges, or you need to purify debuffs. On top of all of it, at his base, he deals with unstoppable buffs extremely well, and then, you know, he has access to bleed and what have you. All very amazing qualities, not to mention his tankiness. You know, the perfect blocks are still coming in very clutch. So I ranked him slightly lower this time around, but I do think that eventually he's going to go back up higher, as more and more people will have had the chance to put the 6-stones in this guy and to rank him up and kind of like return to using Cap. The best thing about Captain America Infinity War is he just works in pretty much every piece of content. We have seen people use him in AQ, AW, most of the quests, and so on and so forth. Very straightforward to play, very safe, very sturdy. And he just puts in a ton of work. There we go. Starting off with Captain America Infinity War. Next up, we're going to be moving, and this again is the same discussion that I already had with my skill ranking video and with my 2021 buff video. It's spots number 14 and 13 belong to Moleman and Kingpin. I genuinely look at them as that tight, as like they're neck and neck, and which one of them is better largely depends on what kind of mastery setup you're using. If you're using Liquid Courage Double Edge, then I think Moleman's better than Kingpin. I genuinely do. If you're using no recoil masteries, then I think Kingpin probably takes the win. But both of them are usable with less than perfect mastery setups as well. Like Moleman's still a very great champion without Liquid Courage and Double Edge. But speaking specifically about Moleman, what is that makes him so amazing? The first biggest thing I'd say is that automatic true accuracy, passive true accuracy at the beginning of every fight. He's arguably one of, if not the best, await counter in the game for wide area of matches. A lot of champions, well, not a lot, but there are several champions who can bypass evade from the beginning of the fight. Like Ghost is one of them, and then we have, like, let's say Strife can do it, and Night Rusher can do it, and there are a few more champions who have some sort of form of true accuracy or evade prevention abilities from the very start of the fight. But all of them are limited to specific type of attacks. It's either only mediums or it's, you know, heavy attacks or something. With Moleman, it's all of the attacks. If you want, you can just start the fight, do your 5-hit combos, opponent will never evade. And that is very valuable because it's extremely convenient. Then on top of that, obviously, the shock immunity, the access to a crap ton of bleeds, ability to shrug off debuffs, and all of that other stuff. There are inherent weaknesses in Moleman having to forfeit his debuff shrug of utility in order to access his max damage and guaranteed crits. But you can play around with that, and, you know, if he could continue shrugging off debuffs guaranteed as he's guaranteed critting, then, you know, he'd be even more bonkers. The way he's right now is already crazy good. And I think he's an absolutely amazing champion that has showed his value in Alliance War for me, has showed his value in Alliance Quests for me, has showed his value in Act 7, and I believe Act 6 as well. So yeah, Moleman well deserving of top 15. And Kingpin, likewise. Kingpin is genuinely one of the most used champions for me. Use him plenty in AQ, AW, and almost all of the hardest content that had been released. Whether we were talking about some Summer of Pain fights, whether we're talking about Act 7, he was one of the 7.4 beta MVPs as well. So if you are preparing for 7.4, I can tell you immediately that Kingpin and King Groot and Ultron were like some of the biggest MVPs in Act 7.4 beta. So I'm absolutely 100% sure that, you know, Kingpin is not going to go anywhere. The things that make Kingpin so amazing as he is, well, To begin with, extreme sustainability, as his, regeneration rate cannot be manipulated, and he's pretty much regenerating all the time. Oh no, wait. Immune to all, yeah. Regen rate cannot be modified, and then he's regenerating pretty much the entire fight. Then he has extremely powerful debuff shrug off abilities, and you don't even need the hood synergy to make sure that you will always be able to shrug off those debuffs if the debuffs are applied aggressively enough to you. Because even if a debuff sneaks through, and if it does get applied, then once you reach 8 debuffs total, including your rage charges, you purify all the debuffs anyways. All of them go away and give you more damage. Then on top of that, he has one of the easiest and most, accessible, unstoppable in the game. You only need to drop a level 2 or charge a heavy attack and you can go unstoppable. You have level 1, which is largely like your utility special attack that allows you to reduce opponents' attack and ability accuracy. And the man is just an absolute cheese master god. And on top of that, he has plenty of amazing and cool synergies also. And yeah, not a major change since he got buffed, but it was enough to absolutely catapult him to a very, very threatening force in the game. Spot number 12, and I'm placing Tigra. And this is Tigra's debut on the list, and arguably she could be higher as well, I think. She is proving herself more and more, and I'll admit I was one of the more skeptical people initially. I, didn't want to pay too much attention to Tigra. Then for a while I thought that it, whatever she can offer is just not necessarily worth the effort. Then I thought, okay, she can do some very cool fights that, don't have necessarily many great matchups, but, it's fairly niche. But it turns out it isn't. And she just keeps on taking down hard fight after hard fight, and she turns out to be a solution to some very, very tricky problems along the contest, whether that is Alliance War, whether it's Alliance Quest, whether it's questing, pretty much everywhere. Only thing you need to do is have a conversation with a competent Tigra player for a couple of hours, let them showcase some of their best fights, and you're going to understand that Tigra is a special type of champion. Tigra genuinely is a special type of champion. I also think that as my own prowess with Tigra is going to increase, as I will gain more first-hand experience of exactly where she works and she doesn't, and what she can and can't do, I'm likely to gonna place her even higher. I'm likely gonna put her even higher up on next list that I'm gonna make in 6 months. I do these champion rankings every 6 months, and Tigra is one of those champions that just bit by bit, argument by argument, fight by fight, hard matchup by hard matchup is, proving herself, at the very least, to me, in my eyes. A very peculiar playstyle. She has definitely quite a big learning curve. But that's kind of part of the beauty there as well. That, whatever she can do is not necessarily easy to be done, especially whilst she's still learning. So I place Tigra in spot number 12. Let's go spot number 11. It's Warlock. And Warlock, again, is just, your standard utility Swiss Army knife. I have always looked at Warlock as a happy accident because absolutely nothing in his abilities necessarily tell you that he's going to be as dominant, as useful, as amazing as he turned out to be. Warlock is one of those champions that just happened to be amazing because he answers the problems that need answering. He is effectively, I think, a poster child of tech class in a sense that, he has the armor buff, he has some power control, he has the heal control, and a ton of utility. Right, so specifically, I do think that he has arguably the best health control. Obviously, it has weaknesses, and the weakness is if opponent has a lot of buffs. But aside from that, he legitimately has the best heal block in the game. It's passive, it's not necessarily even called a heal block, and it is up pretty much entire time, unless the fight is extremely slow when the opponent doesn't throw a special attack for like 25 seconds. But even then you can still parry them, and you're likely going to be able to maintain that infection entire fight. On top of that, obviously, if opponents are healing, then you gain massive power control abilities, which just make the fight instantly so much easier. If you're going up against competitive game modes where opponents might have willpower, for instance, you know, there are times when an opponent can never throw a single special attack because you just keep on power draining them. Then, on top of everything else, he's triple immune, so he's liquid courage, double-edge friendly, all that other good stuff. Has access to bleed, shock, armor break. So he has plenty of debuffs and damage over time capabilities, and passive degeneration as well if he's awakened. And yeah, armor breaks on level 2 for, you know, bigger damage. And then tiny bit of heal. The heal isn't too great, but, you know, it's still something. But here we are, Warlock. Reliable, and very flexible, very versatile. And has been towards the top of the game pretty much since he got released. So Warlock takes spot number 11 in my opinion. Spot number 10, a champion that Magneto. And I spoke about Magneto already in the Mutant video, obviously, and the fact about Magneto is that I genuinely really don't like playing him. If I don't have to, I probably won't. He's never going to be a champion that I'm gonna put on my questing team at the beginning thinking that I'm going to use him to clear the entire lane or something like that. No, in fact, even if I have a chance to use a different champion, even if it makes fight harder, I probably will. It's the parry, single hit heavy, and also the fact that you just have to charge that heavy attack for such a long time. It just makes it even kind of like dreary. But my personal dislike of the playstyle put aside, it's impossible to deny the effect that this guy has had. If you want to know how powerful is Magneto, then as soon as he got buffed, Alliance War defenses got immediately rearranged. As soon as he got buffed, basically he mopped the floor with majority of the bosses in Act 6 and Act 7, where at the moment, Kabam specifically has to make sure that they are countering this guy if they will put a metal boss. And you can see that in 7.3 and I think in 7.4 as well, where, you know, if they put on like Labyrinth of Legends Ultron or like something, they give them like 200% ability accuracy or something like that, just so he can't be shredded through by Magneto. And it's true, because if opponent is metal, then there's not much they can do. They can't you can't be auto block. You can't miss, you have extra attack, 50% perfect block chance, which means super long parry stuns. On top of that, obviously, against everyone, you have 90% bleed and shock, debuff potency, and you have, if opponents are metal, you know, 70% ability accuracy reduction, regeneration, reversal, basically immediately you just need to put on like one debuff and they'll be degenerating instead of regenerating. And most importantly, you just nuke everything down with like one level 3. So whenever you see a metal opponent, almost always you're able to bring in Magneto, just parry heavy to your level 3, drop one level 3, and they're dead. That's all there is to it, and that's how powerful he is. And everybody needs to have a Magneto. I'm going to put it like that. If you have a Magneto, the game becomes, you know, significantly easier. And that's how influential his buff was. He immediately, just by existing, made the game different. And for everybody who is using Magneto to deal with troublesome fights, you're having it a lot easier than anybody who had to do it before having Magneto. We'll put it like that. Because he just shreds a ton of insanely hard fights. Like for me, I remember constantly just doing a path in 7.2 or 7.3, and before the boss, just swap in Magneto, nuke down the boss. Swap in Magneto, nuke down the boss. But yes, absolutely crazy champ. Move on to spot number 9, and that is Hyperion now. Hyperion has always been one of the most ridiculous champions released. And the reason for Hyperion's power, the main reason for Hyperion's power, is just effectively infinite amount of power. To a point where you do not have to land a single basic attack in a fight if you choose not to, and you will not feel that you have to try and stall the fight specifically. There is just a crap ton of passive power gain that enables you to play in many, many different ways. If you need to only use special 3s, you can do that. If you need to only use special 1s and, inflict a ton of debuffs, thus dealing damage over time effect, or, mitigating opponent's heal with Despair Mastery, you can do that. If you need to only land level 2s because you're looking for stuns or armor breaks, you can do that. On top of that, he has a ton of regeneration, if it needs be there, and access to Furies and some crazy amount of damage. The fact that you can just alternate in between all of those playstyles is insane amount of value. Especially considering that you have option of basically never landing a contact attack. If you want spam your level 1, first hit is contact physical attack, but it has very low amount of power comparatively speaking, so it will not, trouble you much, and then everything else is projectile. It's super handy, and I'm super happy that he's available 6-star. He's one of my most wanted champions right now. In fact, I got recently super lucky getting a Cosmic 6-star Awakening gem that has either Hyperion or Null's name on it, more than likely. Can't wait to get this guy ranked up, and just remind people with some good showcases exactly what he can do. We have waited long enough, right? This is where I look at Hyperion. I genuinely do. And another thing that I wanted to say about Hyperion is his versatility goes to the point where you can often use him in a ton of fights where you never thought you could. He might not necessarily always be the top option, the first choice option, but he is a viable option ridiculously often as like your plan B or C. And there is a ton of value in that as well. And I absolutely love it. There we go. Hyperion, little baby boy. Right, spot number 8. At the moment, it's going to be Archangel. I think my previous top 15 rankings, he was 6th or 5th, but there are a few very good reasons why he has slid down slightly. Basically, the same reason why he got down. It's actually exactly the same 2 reasons why he went from the top mutant in my book to 3rd best mutant in my book, and that is because Kitty is a new champion and because Apoc just has been proving himself more and more and more. I absolutely do not think any less of Archangel. If Archangel can do a fight, he's quite often going to be one of the best options. The amount of damage over time that he can inflict is quite ridiculous. The fact that you automatically shut down opponents' healing and pretty much all of their ability accuracy obviously is insanely helpful as well, and that in itself is all the power you need. If opponent can't regenerate, if opponent cannot access any of his abilities, and it's not just defensive or offensive ability, it's all abilities that are getting switched off, there's not much left for them to do but die. Obviously, he can't do every single fight, but that is something that we have long stopped expecting from our champions. The thing that matters the most is how effective is he when he works, and how often he works. And Archangel works more often than not, and he does it better than anybody. Just absolute machine of destruction. He's so good that just like another champion somewhere higher on the list that I'm going to talk in a moment, I quite frequently bring 2 Archangels to like Act 7, for instance. Bring in my 6-star and my 5-star. Okay, I'm going to end up taking some chip damage, something might go wrong, but it's worth carrying a backup. And yeah, crazy good champion. Nothing but love for Archangel. So happy to have him as a 6-star rank 3. Right. Spot number 7 at the moment. In spot number 7, I'm going to be placing the Human Torch. And, we can fight and argue maybe he should be a spot higher. But the fact of the matter is, Human Torch is, at the moment, bonkers. He's one of those champions that didn't necessarily land on both of his feet when he got released, and there's a lot of hesitancy about him initially. But pretty much every single thing that has happened in the game has made this guy significantly more powerful and popular. I touched upon it in my science video, but the main thing is that not only he counters an entire class of champions, which would already be a very, potent way how to get in the top champion list, but also pretty much every other or every 3rd champion released these days has a ton of energy attacks. Either it's on their base hits or it's on their special attacks, but whichever way it is, the more champions get released in the game, the more often Human Torch will have easy time gaining smolders against those champions. So you don't necessarily always need to go up against Mystic champions to make sure the Human Torch goes absolutely bonkers. For instance, if you use Human Torch against Sentinel, every level 1 is like, what, 5 smolder charges? And it's, relatively harmless and painless to take those level 1s in the block, and you just nuke down the fight. Obviously, another thing that makes Human Torch quite special is the fact that he has his pre-fight. There's absolutely nothing really that's immune to the damage from that pre-fight, and even though it's basically once a quest that you can use it, realistically, even if he's awakened, it typically ends up being once a quest when you use that pre-fight ability. But that just adds him so much more flexibility, because he can bypass the incinerate immunities, or he can bypass any nodes that would punish you for incinerating, or any nodes that would let opponents shrug off debuffs because they are passives, and obviously increase your damage even further. So yeah, I do think Human Torch at the moment is still flying high, flying hot. One of the craziest additions in kind of like recent years, that this has put a huge target on an entire Mystic class and a subgroup of champions. Like, Human Torch, similar to Magneto now, is in a point where you have to alter the way you place your defense because of this champion. Like, largely because of Human Torch, Mystic champions are so much more vulnerable on lines for defense. Even though High Ground is kind of helping them right now, but, that's a different story. In general, Human Torch also being one of the 4 Abyss Horsemen serves him well. And if I may say, that if it wouldn't be for the final boss fight, I think Human Torch would be the most important and most influential horseman. Because the difference is that you can use Aegon, Dr. Doom, or Nick Fury, and, they don't necessarily one-shot all or half of their fights. Human Torch pretty much one-shots almost all but 1 or 2 matchups. Every time you would use Human Torch, whether it's Mephisto, Mordo, Morningstar, Ghost Rider, or whatever else, he solos those fights. And therefore, by definition, he also creates pretty much the biggest revive and item saving. He can, down the 5.7 mil opponents without needing to revive. And that's huge. So in general, I think maybe not necessarily for easy path, but definitely when it comes to 100% exploration, boss fight put aside, I think Human Torch is the most important champion for nuking down the problem fights in Abyss. And that obviously puts even more value on the guy, which we're kind of not counting this time, because Abyss, but still, just point in Human Torch's direction. Right, let's move on to spot number 6. And there we go, it's Kitty Pryde. And again, I can already hear an angry mob typing. Kitty Pryde's the best champion in the game. Maybe she will be. Maybe she will be. Maybe she's right now. But she's also very, very new. I am personally always the type of guy who likes to be a lot more cautious. And if she is the best champion in the game, eventually we're all gonna agree on that. I always personally subscribe to the idea of it's, much better to under-promise and over-deliver than rush ahead and over-promise and under-deliver. And that goes often with my champion reviews, when you're gonna hear, majority of the player base or community shouting, this next champion that I have never had a chance to play with or I have used for 2 days is the best champion in the game, and beyond god tier damage and super big yellow numbers and all the crazy thumbnails with all the ridiculous, awesome, insane, amazing, whatever plastered around every thumbnail. I'm always going to be the person that's going to sit down and think, really, is the champion really that good? Will it really be that important? And the way I look at it is, if I'm wrong, no harm done. If I'm wrong, and eventually, I get my mind changed and the champion turns out to be amazing, awesome. I can still make a video, I can still say that this champion is absolutely insane and amazing, and you know, I didn't think so at first. I have changed my opinion, and you should try your best to acquire that champion however you can. But if I'm right, at the very least, I didn't tell you to buy a piece of turd for $500 or whatever. You know what I mean? And it's similar with Kitty Pryde. I see definitely a lot of potential. I see a lot of promise. I do like her. I can promise you she isn't a bad champion by any means. Question is exactly how good she's going to turn out to be. Exactly how many pieces of content she's going to dominate and why people will use her above other amazing champions. A lot of that still has yet to be answered. Since the release of Kitty Pryde, we haven't really had much place where to really take her for a spin. And I know that she can do great things, but you know, she does have inherent weaknesses as well. Whether it is her playstyle or the fact that you ideally want to synergize her up fully. And those are the downsides that have been ultimate downfalls for plenty of champions. And you know, a champion has to be extremely good to justify, let's say, 2 synergy slots. And that one of the reasons why Domino, for instance, isn't used as much is because even though Domino is very good, there's still that RNG aspect, and you're likely going to want to bring in Massacre and Red Hulk, which might not necessarily fit in the plan. All that being said, Kitty obviously is amazing, and all her power is in her phasing. Every time you dash forward, as long as you have 3 or more prowess buffs or effects, you will be phasing. And whilst you're phasing, if she's awakened, you take no damage. Obviously, can't get hit, so that allows you to go for all the intercepts in the world and everything else. If you have Tiger Synergy, if you have 10 plus prowesses, you are passively unblockable while phased as well, which is just bonkers. So you can spend significant portion of the fight being unblockable. And, you know, that effect is basically her core. Yes, there are more incinerate-related stuff or prowess potency-related stuff and so on and so forth. But the fact that she phases a lot, she can't take damage while she's phasing, is basically how she works. And it does work. It does work really, really well. The only thing that I think, again, might be damaging for the game is this line in her signature ability. While phased gain 102 to 250% defensive combat power rate and pause phasing while being struck. I kind of wish it wasn't there. Obviously, it makes her stronger. It makes her harder defender. And on top of that, it opens her up to this entire special 3 cheese rotation where you can just basically throw infinite special 3s if opponent can bypass miss. And I don't think that's cool. I think we could have easily done without this line, and she would still be busted champion, and it would be, you know, better. I think they overdid tiny bit with this single line. I think that line will cause problems in the game in future. You can easily see that happening. But Kitty Pryde, so at the moment, putting her in 6th place. Perhaps next time we're talking, she's going to be in 1st. Perhaps she's going to be in 2nd. Who knows? At the moment, spot number 6 goes to Kitty Pryde. Spot number 5, Mr. Nick Fury himself. A champion that I love to discuss, and a champion that I personally think is one of the best champion designs where your abilities are kind of matched with the actual character, with the image of the character. Where we can look at Odin, and I can now objectively say that, let's say, Odin is a good champion, but Odin is nothing like I would have expected Odin to be, you know, before his release. Somebody would tell me Odin's coming to the game, and I'd look at Odin's abilities, you know, I would have a lot of problem putting 2 and 2 together. If somebody showed me Odin's ability set, I would not necessarily be able to tell you that that ability set is meant for Odin if they kind of hid the keywords there. With Nick Fury, it would be unmistakable. Everything about the champion design screams Nick Fury. Life model decoy, all of his shield stuff, you know, the bleedy stuffs and the grenades and animations, and everything about the design is Nick Fury. Because it's sneaky, it's intricate, it's effective, and it's brutal, and it's awesome. Right, exactly. In short, what makes Nick Fury so awesome? Well, first and foremost, the big thing that everybody knows about Nick Fury is his bleed damage. And it is truly insane, especially whilst in life model decoy. What people do not necessarily know, that the fury that you get from the life model decoy provides you so much damage that even against bleed immune opponents, Nick Fury will have well above average damage output. He really will. So Nick Fury is a champion that relies on bleed to deliver a significant portion of his damage, but the damage can be so bonkers that even against bleed immunes, he's gonna have solid damage output. Top of that, we need to take a look at his charges and realize that he can bypass miss and evade extremely easily, even whilst his LMD is not destroyed. At 10 charges, you can not only purify non-damaging effects, but damaging effects as well. But let's face it, this is not necessarily as effective as some other champions have. Other skill champions have more potent purification abilities when it comes to damage over time effects. When it comes to regular debuffs, Nick Fury still holds his ground. He works quite well. And then, perhaps most importantly, you can spend pretty much entire fight being unblockable, which is rare. It's an extremely rare ability, and it is extremely powerful, which effectively means you never have to struggle to find opening. You can just hit opponent through block whenever you goddamn please. Moving further, you still obviously have access to Disorient, which can be helpful in situations with level 1, level 2, inflicts 4 stacks of bleed and stuns, which is all good, and special 3 is just meant for damage. But the life model decoy aspect, which comes from signature ability, is potentially one of the most understated things in the game, because he is the only champion in the game that is capable of purifying passive effects. And yes, it works only once per quest upon the destruction of life model decoy, but as we just discussed, so does Human Torch's, Nova Flames pretty much. You can only activate the pre-fight once where you're gonna have Nova Flames. And it's still good enough to make a huge impact. And it's the same with Nick Fury. Not to mention, effectively, when you play Nick Fury, you kind of get 2 lives, or at the very bare minimum, you can say 1.5 lives, because once you get KO'd, instead of getting KO'd, you just get stronger. And then we can start talking about his synergies, which are, again, ever so helpful, be that with Quake or be that with Deadpools, which can make pretty much any champion in your roster significantly more suicide friendly. And just one of the most influential champions released in recent years. So here we are. Spot number 5 goes to Nick. Spot number 4, I am placing Apoc. And Apoc I discussed at length in yesterday's videos. I love the fact that he does not necessarily rely on his awakened ability. I'm going to be 100% honest. I don't find much use in making Horsemen of Apocalypse and using those charges. I much rather, 9 times out of 10, keep the 4 charges on Apoc and enjoy full damage output. But everything else put aside, Apoc is another champion that just has layers and layers and layers upon utility and complexity. Some of them, are neat, are nice, are good to have, like bleeds on heavy attacks and, access to concussion and weakness and poison and degeneration. Access to all of those debuffs is very, very good. But, there are plenty of champions who have it as well. What makes Apoc that great? The two main things that make Apoc that goddamn good. Number 1, his debuffs cannot be shrugged off. Opponents suffer 100% purifiability accuracy reduction. And we have a ton of champions, especially in skill class these days, who can purify, stun debuffs. It's 1. Second thing, tenacity nodes and nodes of similar nature get spammed left, right, and center. Even nodes like Ebb and Flow, Knockdown, so on and so forth, have the lines where you basically purify debuffs whenever, that effect expires and things like that. And Apoc just doesn't care about it. You can play normal. And there aren't many champions in the game like that. And that is super helpful. He's a champion that has access to a ton of debuffs. And on top of that, pretty much no one gets rid of those debuffs. And then perhaps the biggest thing, that besides his bleed and potential for incinerate immunity, he's like literally the only champion in the entire game that has access to disorient immunity. And in recent half a year, Kabam just loves spamming Disorient. If you look at the changes in Alliance War, we have new Disorient nodes. If you look at the Map 8, Disorient is ever so present there. If you look at Act 7, Disorient is in like pretty much every quest. Opponent, hits your block, you get disoriented. You dash back, you get disoriented. You know, you parry, you get disoriented. And opponent looks at you the wrong way, you get disoriented. Or anything in the fight happens, you get disoriented. And Apoc is literally the only champion in the game that's immune to it. So that has a ton of value in it. Then there are, you know, some more hidden gems, let's call them like that. Like he can be stun immune while striking. So you can bypass some encroaching stun nodes or something else. And then lastly, obviously all of his synergies. All of these champions, even if you don't make them Horsemen of Apocalypse, get infinitely better. Like Gambit becomes like basically the perfect block king. Wolverine just, you know, starts crit bleeding like an insane machine. Archangel just, you know, gets more and more neuros stacked in, and they last longer. Stone Pyramid X, what you have? You get even more prowesses and even more damage. And then obviously Cable becomes an entirely different champion. Cable just flat out becomes entirely different champion. A top tier champion at that. So yeah, Apoc, spot number 4 at the moment. In my opinion, well deserved. Spot number 3, the latest superstar. I think a lot of people would, well, there is an argument perhaps for spot number 1, but again, I'm a bit more conservative thinking person. I think we're going to see where it goes. I think there is an argument for Hercules potentially going to spot number 1 eventually. But again, we're going to see about that. But if you're taking a look at the champion, it's impossible to deny his impact. It's impossible not to recognize the fact that, you know, half of the players in Alliance Quest now use Hercules. It's impossible to deny the fact that, you know, he just smashes through a ton of hard content. And it's also impossible to deny that it's super easy. There's very little effort that needs to be invested in a fight to just destroy the opponents. In between his immortality, in between his ton of extra secondary damage, the man just slaps. There are obviously, again, hidden gems of utility, and I have discussed Hercules at length as well recently, but some of the more understated piece of utility is the fact that he's effectively stun immune, which again is fairly rare. And his Infuriate debuff. Infuriate debuff is definition of, I don't know, powerful debuff, upgrade on Taunt. And I'm a big fan of Taunt debuff, but Infuriate debuff is even better. And the reason it's so good, because it lets you manipulate AI. And every time you are able to manipulate AI and make it more aggressive, it makes the fight easier for you. Because you know that they're going to be attacking you. You know that they're going to be throwing those special attacks, and the fight is going to go quicker and easier. And you're going to have easier time intercepting them. Then on top of that, obviously, he can bypass miss and auto block. Has access to precision and cruelty buffs, also indestructible and power gain buff if need be. But the main thing, the main thing that makes Hercules good is his easy, quick ramp up, and the fact that you can land that damage immediately, easily, straightforward. Any conditions that are placed on the fight. If you cannot, you know, if you can't do 5-hit combos, no problem. You use 2-hit combos, heavy attacks, doesn't matter. There is no ability that only activates with second medium attack or fourth light attack or something like that. If you cannot use a special attack, yeah, you're going to lose some damage, but there's going to be a crap ton of damage left over. And that is the reason why Hercules is good. That unlike many other high damage output champions, he doesn't necessarily even have much of a need to stick to a rotation. Yes, he has ideal rotation, you know, level 1, level 2, basically. But you don't need to do that to do a crap ton of damage, unlike you do with other champions. And that combined with his immortality, and the fact that you go unblockable whilst immortal, and you can pause that immortality for long enough time to pretty much finish any fight. Like, if I'm being honest, recent, like, week and a half, I'm pretty much doing every single fight in Alliance Quest with Hercules, and I don't even try to maintain my health. I think second or first fight where I enter with Hercules, I go down to 1 HP, and then every fight just nuke opponents down whilst being immortal. That just showcases very good what kind of effect he can have. He's good enough to make you lazy. And that's a very big compliment. Because that is a compliment that I believe in past I have only given to Quake. It's good enough to make you lazy, because you just don't care what abilities opponents have and what nodes they are. As long as you are able to hit them, they will die, and you're going to be immortal, and you're going to finish that fight. And it's crazy. It's good. It's amazing. It's insane. And let's see how Kabam counters him and what happens with Hercules. Spot number 2 is Daddy Dr. Doom. Spot number 3 is Daddy Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom is clearly favorite kid of somebody. He's the kid that got all the toys, all the genes, and seemingly nothing goes wrong for. He's one of the sturdiest champions in the game, one of the most dominant champions in the game. And the reason why Dr. Doom is so good is because who you fight against and what do they do matters very little. Once you get started, you put opponents in Doom cycle, which is basically like putting a toddler in a corner. And with Doom, they largely stay in that corner until the fight is over. And there is a ton of power in that. There is a ton of power in reducing the time and options opponent have to do anything. And if you're using Dr. Doom correctly, opponent has only one input, basically. Opponent has one chance to do anything in a full cycle of you throwing a level 1 combo, level 3, level 1. So you will land about 40, 50 hits on the opponent and like 2 special attacks. An opponent has only one chance where they can do something, which is after you throw your level 1 and you're trying to get back to your next level 3. Or if you drop level 2, then the fight's over, and then they don't have any points of input apart from where they started the fight, pretty much. And that's where the power comes from. Obviously, everything else about that, nullify all the buffs effortlessly, power control effortlessly, and access to shock and passive stun, and everything else is awesome. Arm break immunity and armor shatter immunity and shock immunity is awesome. His aura has the wrath and the fact that you can basically resist heavy attacks or last hits or special attacks, that's also super helpful. He's a tank in every manner of the word. Access to incinerate, also great, why not? But the real power there is the Doom rotation. And I like also how well it incorporates who Dr. Doom is, because he doesn't control the opponent in a similar sense that, let's say, Vision does or Magic does when it comes to power control. He actually gives opponents the power and then takes it away, and then enjoys taking it away and giving it back. He kind of sadistically plays and toys with the opponents, and there is very little that they can do. And that's Dr. Doom, one of the best designed characters for this game ever. Similar to Nick Fury, similar to Apocalypse when it comes to transferring comic book powers into this game. You can read these abilities and you can hide all the specific names, but due to the nature and due to the gameplay style that you have, you're probably gonna guess it's Dr. Doom. Because it's quite badass. So Dr. Doom goes number 2. And number 1's Ghost. Number 1's Ghost. I do not think Ghost is dethroned yet. I think, if anything, Ghost has more of an argument for top spot right now than she had before. And that is because of Kitty Pryde. Because of Kitty Pryde, Kabam had to scale back their true focus spam, which enabled Ghost to go roam free again for a ton of content. And obviously, also because of Kitty Pryde, you have one of the most OP teams that you can piece together in between Ghost, Kitty Pryde, Tigra. Then you can flip in like Hood or Wasp or whatever you want, and you can just go and nuke everything. Everything will die. I do still believe in the power of Ghost. I think the thing that we know why Ghost is so strong. Obviously, the fact that she can always find an opening easily due to the phase is like one of the main reasons why she's as powerful. She can get on-demand intercept. She doesn't have to worry about opponents, being stun immune or debuff immune, because she doesn't inflict debuffs or any of that stuff. Plenty of guaranteed crits, bypass away. That's all awesome. think the one thing that too often emphasizes just how insane Ghost is the fact that she converts damage over time effects into furies. Getting rid of damage over time effects already would be extremely powerful. If she just, phased and, all damage over time effects go away. The fact that they give her so much extra damage is borderline over the top at this point. And yeah, she has her inherent weaknesses. I do think that there can be a time potentially that either, Kitty Pryde or Ghost or, Kitty Pryde or Hercules or somebody takes the #1 spot, or maybe something that hasn't been created yet. But at this point, it's quite hard to see that, because Kabam has already thrown kitchen sink and everything else in the kitchen at her. Ton of champions have armor break, ton more champions have abilities to bypass miss. And she still works against them. You need to put in a bit more skill, but even if she can't phase, she can still destroy those fights, because she can still guaranteed crit, she can still guaranteed crit on special attacks, she can still get rid of all damage over time effects. And incidentally, Kabam has, I think, to a degree, kind of given up on countering Ghost, because we see many more nodes now where there are damage over time effects. We see many more of these energy adoption lanes or what have you. And Ghost just absolutely revels in all of that. So yeah. I do generally think that Ghost is currently making a huge comeback. And also, on top of it all, High Ground being in Alliance War defensive tactic right now will help Ghost make even bigger return, because they got rid of true focus on the mini-boss island, and now there is nothing to stop really Ghost from phasing either. So there is that too. And I generally believe Ghost is still the single most powerful champion in the game on her own merits, and also as a synergy team. Ironically, a lot of people think that you have to run synergies with Ghost. I generally will use Ghost without synergies 9 times out of 10. Occasionally, I might bring in Hood, but I very rarely use Wasp synergy. Because again, it's just one of those things where practice makes perfect, and you can do without Wasp synergy quite easily, unless you specifically need the unblockable specials. Everything put together, I still believe Ghost to be the best champion in the game. I do believe that the question will open for debate finally after some time, because of Hercules, because of Kitty Pryde, maybe because of somebody else. But right now, this is where I still place her. And that is it. So I'm going to quickly go over the entire list again, and you guys can tell me what you guys think. Another quick thing, I might be a bit late with the tier list update, because tomorrow is 25th, Christmas, so I do not know what's going to happen with that. Either way, champions that barely missed the list: Ultron, Claire, CGR, Mr. Fantastic, Diablo, Aegon, and Shang-Chi. Those are the 6 champions that barely missed out on the top 15. The actual top 15: Captain America Infinity War, Moleman, Kingpin, Tigra, Warlock, Magneto, Hyperion, Archangel, Human Torch, Kitty Pryde, Nick Fury, Apocalypse, Hercules, Doctor Doom, and Ghost. That is it for now, though. This video took a while, so I hope nothing goes wrong. See ya. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the